You haven't heard from them in days, maybe weeks. No calls, no texts, just silence. And in that silence, a storm is brewing inside your head. Are they really over it? Do they even care anymore? Or are they feeling everything you're feeling, just quietly? If you found yourself spiraling in the middle of no contact, constantly questioning whether it meant finality or confusion, you're not alone, and you're definitely not crazy. Because here's the truth, most people won't tell you. When someone still loves you but doesn't want to show it, those feelings leak out in subtle, almost invisible ways. And today we're uncovering those hidden signals. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 silent but undeniable signs that they're still emotionally connected to you, even if they're not reaching out. These are signs based on real human behavior and emotional psychology, not false hope or wishful thinking. So if you're stuck in the quiet aftermath of a breakup, if you're scrolling through your old messages, checking their socials, or replaying every word from your last conversation, take a deep breath. You're in the right place, because by the end of this video, you'll finally have clarity, not just from what they say, but from what they're still showing. Without saying a single word, let's decode their silence. Let's uncover the truth. When someone you love suddenly goes silent, it feels like a death sentence. No messages, no calls. They've vanished right when you're most desperate for answers. But here's the truth that so many people miss. Silence doesn't always mean it's over. In fact, sometimes silence means more than words ever could. Think about it. When a person is truly done, they usually make it clear. They tell you it's over. They block you. They move on in obvious ways. They create distance with purpose. But when someone goes quiet without closure, when they disappear into that confusing emotional gray zone, that's when it gets complicated. Because no contact isn't always a power move or a breakup finalizer. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism. Sometimes they're confused, overwhelmed, or even waiting for you to make a move. Other times they're hoping that distance will make you miss them more, because they miss you too, but their pride, pain, or fear is getting in the way. In many cases, the silence isn't about you at all. It's about them, their own emotional battle, their own need for control, or their own struggle to let go of something that still matters deeply. This is why it's dangerous to assume that no contact means done. It could mean they're hurting, they're thinking, they're watching you from afar, carefully measuring every step. It could mean they're replaying memories at night, just like you are. It could mean they're hoping you'll reach out first, but they're too scared to admit it. No contact is messy. It can be used to heal, but it can also be a quiet form of connection. A way to say, I still care, but I don't know how to show it. So before you give up hope based on their silence alone, keep watching. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 5 subtle signs, real signs, that they're still emotionally tied to you, even without saying a single word. And once you see these signs, you'll realize sometimes silence doesn't mean goodbye. It means I don't know how to come back. One of the clearest silent signs that someone still has feelings for you, despite being in no contact, is that they're still emotionally reactive. And this is something most people overlook, because we often expect love to show up as sweetness, kindness, warmth. But here's the twist. Emotional reactivity isn't always soft. Sometimes it shows up as anger, defensiveness, even indifference that feels a little too forced. If your ex is still triggered by things related to you, if they're reacting in any way, whether directly or indirectly, it means something inside them is still active. Their emotions haven't shut down, and that matters more than you might think. For example, let's say you post something on social media, and a mutual friend casually tells you, yeah, they saw it, and they didn't look happy. Or maybe they block and unblock you. Maybe they start talking negatively about you to others, telling people you've moved on too fast, or that you never really cared. That kind of behavior doesn't come from someone who's emotionally neutral. It comes from someone who's still emotionally invested. Emotional reactivity is proof that you still hold space in their mind and heart. When someone's truly done, they become detached. You could win the lottery or vanish off the planet, and they wouldn't flinch. But if your presence or even the idea of you can shift their mood, affect their energy, or change their behavior, they're not over it. And reactivity isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's them watching your stories within minutes but never reaching out. It's that accidental like on a photo, or that friend who says they asked how you were doing but told me not to tell you. That's emotional reactivity in disguise. The deeper truth, emotion, whether it's love, jealousy, anger, or sadness, is connection. Negative emotion is still emotion. It means your present still has power, and that means you're not forgotten. You're not just the past. You're still part of their emotional present, whether they admit it or not. Now, this doesn't mean they're ready to come back, or that they even know what they want, but it does mean the story isn't as finished as the silence might make it seem. So if you've noticed them acting irritated, distant in a weirdly specific way, or unusually focused on what you're doing post-breakup, that's not nothing. That's a thread of connection. And in many cases, it's the first sign that the emotional cord hasn't been fully cut. Coming up, we're going to explore another powerful indicator, one that's even easier to miss because it happens quietly and often behind a screen. Sometimes the loudest proof that someone still cares is hidden in the quietest actions, the things they do when they think you'll never notice. One of the clearest signs that someone isn't over you, even during no contact, is when they keep tabs on your life silently. They're not texting, they're not calling, but they're watching. It starts small. You post a story on Instagram, and they're always one of the first views. Maybe they don't interact, but their name is always there, hovering in your notifications. They might not like your posts or comment anymore, but somehow they're always lurking in the background. And you wonder if they don't care anymore. Why are they still looking? The truth is, when someone is emotionally detached, they unfollow, they mute, they move on. But when they're still holding on, when they're conflicted, uncertain, or even still emotionally attached, they watch. Because watching is safe. It allows them to feel close to you without being vulnerable. It's their way of staying connected without risking rejection. And it doesn't always stop at social media. Maybe you hear from a mutual friend that they asked about you. Maybe they started showing up in places they know you frequent. Or you notice they suddenly reactivated their account right after you posted something personal. These small patterns aren't accidents. They're signals. What's really happening here is emotional surveillance. It's not about obsession. It's about curiosity tied to unresolved feelings. They want to know how you're doing. If you're seeing someone new, if you've moved on, if you seem happy, or if you miss them. The strange part, many people in no contact convince themselves they're being strong by not reaching out, yet they're still deeply connected. Checking in on you becomes a secret ritual. They tell themselves they're over it, while watching your every move like it's a chapter they can't stop reading. And maybe you're doing the same. That's why this stage feels so confusing. Both people can feel close and distant at the same time. And that's what makes no contact so emotionally charged. If they didn't care, they wouldn't look. If they didn't feel something, they wouldn't need to check. So the next time you notice their quiet digital footsteps, remember silence doesn't mean detachment. Sometimes it's how people hide the fact that they're still holding on. What comes next is even more telling, because the signs don't stop at watching. Sometimes they go a step further. By being present in digital spaces in ways that seem accidental, but rarely are. You'd think that when someone stops talking to you, they disappear from your world. But somehow they don't. They're still there. Not in direct messages, not in your inbox, but everywhere else. You start noticing them popping up in oddly specific ways. A like from their sibling on your recent post. A suggested friend tag that brings them back into view. Maybe they posted a song lyric that sounds suspiciously familiar. Or they've started sharing quotes about growth, heartbreak, or regret that feel like they're aimed right at you. This isn't a coincidence. This is them being present in digital ways, subtly, strategically, emotionally. It's a kind of digital breadcrumb trail that says, I'm still here, I still see you, and maybe, I hope you still see me too. Sometimes it's passive. Their Spotify playlist suddenly includes the song you once danced to together. Their TikTok is full of heartbreak content. They post a memory from last summer that just so happens to be when you were still together. Other times it's more direct. They comment on a mutual friend's post. They know you'll see. They tag someone in a meme you would have sent them. It's not obvious, but it's not subtle either. And here's the truth most people miss. If someone is truly done with you, they don't curate their online presence to match your memories. They don't carefully leave traces of themselves for you to notice. But when someone is emotionally conflicted, when they miss you but don't want to reach out, they leave signs in places they know you'll find them. They won't message you, but they'll change their profile picture to one where they look happier. They won't call you, but they'll post a cryptic message at 2 a.m. that feels like it's coming from the same pain you're feeling. That's not just random behavior. That's emotional signaling. It's the digital version of sitting at a cafe you used to visit together, hoping you'll walk in. In today's world, our online presence is a mirror of our emotional world. And when someone is still emotionally involved, their presence online starts to reflect that, whether they realize it or not. They may not be in contact, but their energy is still wrapped around yours in small trackable ways. So if they're suddenly showing up in the comments, changing their bio, or even just reacting to things that seem too aligned with your shared past, pay attention. That's not just digital noise. That's emotional proximity, expressed through a screen. And the deeper this behavior goes, the more it starts to show up in real life too. Which brings us to something that feels even more personal. The way your mutual friends begin acting differently, almost like they know something you don't. Let's talk about sign 4, because silence isn't the only thing that speaks. Sometimes it's the people around them who start telling the truth. Sometimes it's not what your ex says or doesn't say that gives everything away. It's how the people around them start acting. And suddenly, the ones who used to treat you normally don't. You bump into a mutual friend, and the conversation feels just a little too careful. They hesitate when your ex comes up. Their tone changes, they glance away, or try to steer the topic somewhere else. It feels subtle, but off. That's a sign. Because when someone is still emotionally attached to you, but isn't reaching out themselves, they often talk about you to the people you both know. And even if your friends don't mean to, their energy shifts. They start filtering their words. They become the messengers of a silent story that's still unfolding behind the scenes. Maybe a friend mentions your ex asked how you've been, but didn't want you to know. Or someone lets it slip that your ex still looks through your photos, or brings you up when they're drinking or venting. Sometimes mutual friends start acting distant, because they're caught in the middle. Other times they get closer, because they know your ex isn't over you, and they want to keep tabs for them. Here's what's really happening. Your ex is still emotionally connected, but for whatever reason, fear, pride, confusion, they're choosing not to tell you. So instead, their curiosity, their regret, their lingering feelings leak out through others. Your mutual circle becomes the emotional middle ground. And here's something even more telling. If those mutual friends start dropping little breadcrumbs like, they're not doing as great as they seem, or they still talk about you, or even just, they've been weird lately, those aren't just casual comments. Those are signals. People don't mention things like that without a reason. Whether they realize it or not, they're giving you a peek into what your ex is too afraid to say out loud. Sometimes, the silence between you and your ex gets so loud, it makes your friends uncomfortable. And when your name still has weight in their world, when it still causes tension, sparks reactions, or invites careful glances, you can be sure you're still very present in their mind. So pay attention to how your mutual friends are acting. Their behavior becomes a reflection of what's not being said directly. Because when someone has truly let go, there's no energy left in the air. But when they haven't, the silence becomes a whisper. And that whisper often starts echoing through the people you both once trusted. And as powerful as that is, nothing reveals the truth more than this final sign. It's subtle, it's personal, and it's usually the one people miss, until it's too obvious to ignore. One of the most misleading signs after a breakup is what appears on the surface, especially online. From a distance, it might look like they've moved on. They're posting pictures, smiling in stories, going out with friends, maybe even seeing someone new. But if you look just a little closer, something doesn't add up. This is one of the most powerful silent signs. They're acting like they've moved on, but something about it feels off. The energy is performative, it's curated, it's rushed, like they're trying harder to prove something to you than actually live their truth. And here's what most people miss. when someone truly moves on, their life starts to feel naturally distant from you. It no longer revolves around your emotional orbit. But when they're still emotionally tethered, their actions don't come from peace. They come from pressure. Pressure to forget. Pressure to fill the void. Pressure to make you notice. They might suddenly post more than they ever did in the relationship. Smiling selfies, group photos, late night outings, new experiences, new people, and on the surface it all screams, "I'm doing fine." But real healing doesn't need an audience. Real detachment isn't loud, it's quiet. If their life now feels like a highlight reel that's strangely timed right after your breakup, there's a strong chance it's not for them, it's for you. Sometimes they even jump into a rebound, not because they've healed, but because they're trying to silence the part of them that still aches for you. And you'll know it when it doesn't last, when the energy behind their new happy life starts to crack, when the party photos stop, when their stories become quiet again, when they start disappearing from the digital stage they tried so hard to own. That's not healing, that's distraction. And distraction is often a mask for unresolved feelings. What's really happening behind the scenes? They're likely thinking of you more than they admit, comparing others to you, wondering if they made the right choice, telling themselves they're over it, while secretly checking if you've seen their posts. And maybe you've been doing the same, because emotional detachment doesn't happen instantly. It's messy, it's full of false starts and silent longing. And even if they're not saying it, their life, their real life, is still tied to the memory of you. So if it feels like they're trying too hard, moving too fast, or suddenly becoming a version of themselves they never were before, that's not moving on. That's emotional theater. And behind that performance, there's often someone who's still quietly hurting. And now that you've seen all 5 signs, the question isn't just if they still love you, it's what do you want to do with that knowledge? Now that you've seen the 5 silent signs proving someone still loves you even in the middle of no contact, it's time to ask yourself, what does this mean for you? Knowing these signs isn't about holding on to hope blindly or waiting endlessly. It's about understanding the reality behind the silence so you can make empowered choices for your own healing and happiness. First, remember this, their silence doesn't define your worth or your future. It simply reveals what's happening on their side. An emotional battle you might not see, a struggle to let go, or maybe a quiet longing masked by pride or fear. So how do you respond when you recognize these signs? Start by grounding yourself in clarity. Are you looking for signs because you want to reconnect, or because you need closure? Both are valid, but your approach will be very different depending on what you want. If you want to rebuild, patience and respect for their space is key. No contact can be powerful, both for you and for them, but only if it's used intentionally. Focus on improving your life, your confidence, and your happiness first. When the time feels right, and if the signs continue, you can consider gentle outreach, something small, thoughtful, and pressure-free. If closure is what you need, these signs help you understand their true feelings so you can stop wondering. Sometimes knowing they still care, but can't or won't act on it, is the final step in freeing yourself emotionally. It allows you to say goodbye on your own terms, without bitterness or confusion. Either way, this journey is about your growth. No one else controls your happiness, and no one else is responsible for your healing. You hold that power. Also, take care not to fall into the trap of interpreting every small sign as proof they'll come back. Emotional attachment is complex and can keep people stuck in cycles of hope and pain. So be gentle with yourself, balance hope with self-respect. Finally, use this knowledge to be honest with yourself about your boundaries. If their silence or mixed signals hurt you more than they